caught my sister sleeping with my husband, so I secretly got pregnant by her ex-boyfriend to destroy her life. Original post. I, 32F, always thought my life was on track, but I guess that's what happens when you live in a delusion created by your own family. You see, I come from a family where appearances are everything. My mother, Linda, 60F, is the queen of appearances. She's the type who hosts a dinner party and spends 3 days beforehand obsessing over what the neighbors might think of her choice of hors d'oeuvres. My father, Harold, 63M, is the stereotypical small-town dad who believes that life's problems can be solved with a firm handshake and a cold beer. And then there's my younger sister, Brianna, 28F, the golden child who's always been the center of everyone's universe. She's the kind of person who could set the house on fire, and my parents would still praise her for her passion. Growing up in this family was like being cast in a sitcom where I was the awkward, overlooked middle child. I was the artistic one, which in my mother's vocabulary is a polite way of saying the one who's going to end up needing therapy. Brianna, on the other hand, was perfect. She was the head cheerleader, the prom queen, the one who got straight A's without even trying. And while I was scraping by with my B average and dreaming of escaping to art school, Brianna was busy planning her wedding to Jake, 30M, her high school sweetheart who just happened to be loaded. Now, Jake was the kind of guy who'd had everything handed to him on a silver platter. His family owned half the town, and he walked around like he was the Prince of Ohio. Naturally, Brianna saw him as her ticket to a life of luxury, and my parents couldn't have been prouder. Their wedding was a spectacle straight out of a rom-com. White doves, a horse-drawn carriage, the whole 9 yards. Meanwhile, I was stuck wearing a hideous bridesmaid dress, wondering how I was ever going to top this with my eventual courthouse wedding. Fast forward a few years, and Brianna's perfect life wasn't quite as perfect as she'd hoped. Turns out, Jake's idea of a good time was spending weekends at the country club, golfing with his equally obnoxious friends, while Brianna was left to her own devices. And Brianna, being the restless soul she is, started looking for excitement elsewhere. Enter Todd, 35M, my husband, the man who I thought was my rock. Todd was everything I'd ever wanted. Handsome, charming, and completely devoted to me. Or so I thought. We met when I was 26, right after I graduated from college with a degree in English that my mother assured me would lead to a lifetime of unemployment. Todd was a contractor, and he swept me off my feet with promises of a life filled with love, laughter, and maybe a fixer-upper or two. We got married in a small, intimate ceremony, the polar opposite of Brianna's lavish affair, and I thought I'd finally found my happily ever after. But here's the thing about happily ever afters. They're a load of crap. The signs were all there, but I was too blind to see them. Todd and Brianna had always been a little too friendly, a little too close for comfort. But I chalked it up to family bonding. After all, Brianna was my sister, and Todd was my husband. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything. It all started at Thanksgiving last year. Our family has a tradition of gathering at my parents' house for a massive feast, complete with all the trimmings and a side of passive-aggressive comments. This year was no different, except for the fact that Todd and Brianna seemed to be in their own little world. They were laughing at inside jokes, sharing knowing glances, and generally acting like two teenagers with a crush. I tried to ignore it, but the nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. It didn't help that my mother kept making pointed remarks about how wonderful it was that Todd and Brianna got along so well. I should have known something was up, but I was too busy dealing with my own issues, like the fact that my biological clock was ticking louder than Big Ben, and every time I mentioned starting a family, Todd found some excuse to put it off. We'd been trying for years, or so I thought, but nothing ever came of it. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't doing something right. Maybe I was too stressed. Maybe, just maybe, the universe was punishing me for some past life transgression. But deep down, I knew the truth. I just didn't want to face it. Then came the day that changed everything. I was cleaning out Todd's work truck, because apparently, I'm the only one in the house who understands the concept of cleanliness, when I found a pair of lacy red panties stuffed under the seat. And let me tell you, those panties were not mine. I'm more of a comfy cotton kind of girl, and these were the kind of panties you wear when you're trying to impress someone. My first thought was that Todd was cheating, but I didn't want to believe it. I confronted him, and he gave me some lame excuse about how they probably belonged to a client's girlfriend who must have left them behind. Really, Todd? Do I look that stupid? But I let it go. Why? Because I was desperate to hold on to the illusion that my marriage was still intact. I convinced myself that I was being paranoid, that I was overreacting. But then, fate decided to smack me in the face with the truth. A few weeks later, I was grabbing coffee downtown when I saw them. Todd and Brianna, sitting in a corner booth, looking way too cozy for two people who were supposedly just in-laws. Brianna was giggling, her hand resting on Todd's arm, and I could have sworn I saw her kiss his cheek. My heart dropped into my stomach. This was it, the confirmation I needed. But instead of marching over there and confronting them like a sane person, I decided to play the long game. You see, I've never been the type to go off half-cocked. My mother may have raised me to be a people pleaser, but she also taught me how to hold a grudge. And if there's one thing I've learned from watching Brianna all these years, it's that revenge is a dish best served cold. So I started planning. I knew Brianna had always been jealous of me in one area: kids. Despite her perfect marriage and perfect life, she hadn't been able to have children. She tried everything: IVF, acupuncture, those ridiculous crystal healing sessions, but nothing worked. She blamed it on everything from gluten to Mercury in retrograde, but the truth was she just couldn't conceive. Meanwhile, Todd and I had been trying for years, but with no luck. Except, here's the kicker: I'd been on birth control the whole time. I had no intention of bringing a child into the mess that was my life, but now I had a new plan. Jake, Brianna's ex, was still hung up on her. He'd been devastated when she left him, and I knew he'd jump at the chance to get back at her. So I started spending time with Jake under the guise of supporting him through his tough time. It didn't take long for things to heat up, because let's be real, Jake wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, and he definitely wasn't going to turn down a willing woman. I seduced him plain and simple. I knew what I was doing, and I knew exactly what I wanted to achieve. Once I was sure I was pregnant, I dropped the bomb on Todd. He was thrilled, over the moon even. He thought this was the miracle we'd been waiting for, and I let him believe that. Why complicate things? Besides, I had no intention of letting Jake or anyone else know the truth until I was good and ready. I played the doting wife, all the while knowing that my plan was coming together perfectly. But, as with all good plans, things didn't go exactly as expected. A few weeks later, Jake called me, panicking. He'd been having second thoughts about our little affair and wanted to come clean to Brianna. He said he couldn't live with the guilt and that he still loved her. Typical. I managed to talk him down, but it was clear I needed to speed up my timeline. I decided the best way to blow up Brianna's world was at the family Christmas party. Our family Christmas parties are the stuff of legend. Picture it: an over-decorated house straight out of a Hallmark movie. Dad grilling outside in freezing temperatures because he refuses to accept that it's winter, and my mother flitting around like a deranged Martha Stewart, making sure everything is just so. The wine flows freely, the arguments are inevitable, and every year, someone leaves in tears. This year, I was determined it would be Brianna. The evening started off like any other, lots of forced smiles and awkward small talk. Brianna was in her element, showing off her new designer outfit and bragging about her latest charity work, which was really just an excuse for her to hobnob with the town's elite. Todd was by her side, of course, laughing at her jokes and acting like the doting husband. It made me sick to watch, but I held it together, biding my time. As the night wore on and everyone got a little too tipsy, I decided it was time. I stood up, tapped my glass, and announced that Todd and I were expecting a baby. The room fell silent, and for a moment, I thought I might actually enjoy this. But then Brianna, not to be outdone, stood up and blurted out that she and Todd had been having an affair for the past year and that she was leaving Jake to be with him. Cue the record scratch. This was not how things were supposed to go. I wanted to be the one to humiliate her, to watch her crumble as her world fell apart. But now, she was the one with the upper hand, and I was the one who looked like a fool. Todd tried to explain, tried to say it wasn't like that, but I didn't care. I'd lost control of the situation, and I hated every second of it. But the story doesn't end there, because in a final twist of fate, my pregnancy turned out to be twins. And here's the kicker: Jake is black, something Brianna had conveniently overlooked in her bid to have it all. The look on her face when my beautiful, brown-skinned babies were born was worth every ounce of pain and betrayal I'd felt. She tried to play it off, pretended she didn't care, but I knew it killed her inside. Todd left me shortly after, running off with Brianna to start their new, perfect life together. But I didn't care. I had my revenge, and it was sweeter than I ever could have imagined. Update 1. It's been 6 months since the twins were born. And let me tell you, life has been nothing short of a soap opera. Todd and Brianna are still pretending to live their best lives, but the cracks are starting to show. My parents are torn. Mom is furious with me for ruining the family, while Dad is quietly supportive, even if he doesn't say much. He's always been the kind of guy who believes in keeping the family together, no matter what, and I think he's secretly proud of me for standing up for myself, even if it was in the most dramatic way possible. But the real drama has been with Jake. After the twins were born, he decided he wanted to be involved in their lives. I was hesitant at first. After all, I'd used him as a pawn in my twisted game, but he's their father, and they deserve to know him. So, we've been trying to co-parent, which is a lot more complicated than I anticipated. Jake's still hung up on Brianna, which makes things awkward, but he's a good dad, and I can't fault him for that. Meanwhile, Brianna is spiraling. She thought she'd won when she ran off with Todd, but now she's stuck with a man who's miserable, a family that's falling apart, and a sister who's not afraid to remind her every chance she gets that she's lost everything. She's been posting all over social media about her perfect life, but it's all smoke and mirrors. I know she's struggling, and honestly, I'm loving every minute of it. My mother, ever the queen of denial, is trying to keep up appearances, telling everyone that families go through rough patches and that everything will work out in the end. Dad's not so sure. He's always been the pragmatic one, and he's seen enough to know that this family is beyond repair. The tension between them is palpable, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're sleeping in separate bedrooms these days. And then there's the rest of the town. Small towns are like fishbowls. Everyone knows everyone's business, and my family's dirty laundry is the juiciest gossip in years. I can't go to the grocery store without someone giving me a look that's a mix of pity and curiosity. I know they're all waiting to see what I'll do next, and I have to admit, it's kind of fun being the center of attention for once. But here's the thing, I'm not done yet. Brianna may think she's hit rock bottom, but she has no idea what's coming. I've got a few more tricks up my sleeve, and I'm not afraid to use them. Update 2. Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, life threw me another curveball. Todd showed up at my door last night, drunk off his ass and begging to come back. Apparently, life with Brianna isn't the fairy tale he thought it would be. She's been spending money like water, redecorating their new house every other week, and Todd's struggling to keep up. He admitted he misses the simple life we had, the one where he wasn't constantly trying to impress a woman who's never satisfied. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But here's the thing, I'm not taking him back. Not after everything he's done. I told him he's welcome to see the twins, but that's it. We're done. He tried to argue, tried to say that we belong together, but I wasn't having it. I've moved on, and he's just going to have to deal with the mess he's made of his life. As for Brianna, well, she's not handling the news well. She showed up at Jake's house last week, screaming about how I'd ruined her life and stolen her future. Jake, to his credit, kicked her out and told her to never come back. He's finally starting to see her for who she really is, a selfish, manipulative brat who's only ever cared about herself. It's about time. The twins are doing great, by the way. They're the light of my life, and every time I look at them, I'm reminded that I did the right thing. Sure, my life isn't perfect and I'm still figuring things out, but at least I'm not living a lie like Brianna and Todd. I've got my kids, I've got my freedom, and I've got the satisfaction of knowing that I came out on top. But I'm not gonna lie, there are times when I wonder if I went too far. Maybe I should have just confronted them outright, dealt with the fallout, and moved on. But then I remember the look on Brianna's face when she realized what I'd done, and I know I made the right choice. Sometimes you have to play dirty to win. Update 3. You'd think by now that the drama would start winding down, but nope, this train wreck just keeps on rolling. I got a call from Jake the other day, and he had some interesting news. Turns out Brianna's been cheating on Todd with one of her old high school flames, a guy named Brad, 34M, who's always been a bit of a bad boy. I found out through one of her friends who couldn't wait to spill the tea. Apparently, they've been hooking up behind Todd's back for months, and he's just now starting to catch on. Todd, of course, is devastated. He thought he'd found his soulmate, and now he's realizing that she's just as messed up as the rest of us. He called me, crying, asking what he should do. I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, seriously? This is what you get for leaving your wife for her sister. Karma's a bitch, and she's got your number, buddy. Meanwhile, Jake and I have been getting along surprisingly well. We're not together. God knows we've both got too much baggage for that, but we've developed a weird kind of friendship. He's been spending more time with the twins, and I can tell he really loves them. It's strange, but in a way, this whole mess has brought us closer together. We both know what it's like to be betrayed by the people we love the most, and that's something that bonds you, I guess. As for Brianna, well, she's losing her mind. She's been trying to keep up appearances, but it's clear that her perfect life is falling apart at the seams. She's been lashing out at everyone, her friends, her family, even Todd. I heard she got into a screaming match with my mom the other day, accusing her of taking my side in all of this. Mom, of course, denied it, but I know she's secretly enjoying the drama as much as I am. Like mother, like daughter, right? Update 4. Just when I thought Brianna couldn't sink any lower, she proved me wrong. Todd finally found out about her affair with Brad, and he's filing for divorce. He's a wreck, but honestly, I can't bring myself to care. He made his bed, and now he's got to lie in it. Brianna, on the other hand, is a complete mess. She's been calling me non-stop, begging for my forgiveness, saying she didn't mean to hurt me. Yeah, right. I haven't answered any of her calls. I'm done with her. Jake and I, on the other hand, are doing better than ever. We've settled into a comfortable co-parenting routine, and the twins are thriving. They're the light of my life, and I wouldn't change a thing about how all of this played out. I've even started dating again, a guy from work who's kind, stable, and most importantly, not related to me in any way. As for my family, well, they're still a hot mess. Mom and Dad are trying to keep the peace, but it's clear that this whole situation has driven a wedge between us all. We used to be close, but now it feels like we're all just pretending, going through the motions of being a family. It's sad, but it's also kind of freeing. I don't feel the need to play the good daughter anymore. I'm done with that role. And then there's Brianna. She's finally hit rock bottom, and it's not pretty. She's been fired from her job, something about inappropriate behavior, though I'm sure the details will come out soon enough. And she's been forced to move back in with my parents. The irony isn't lost on me. This is the same woman who used to brag about how she'd never live with mom and dad again. And now she's sleeping in her old bedroom, trying to piece her life back together. I'd feel sorry for her if she hadn't brought this all on herself. But here's the kicker. She's pregnant. Yup, turns out she and Brad were more than just a fling, and now she's carrying his child. The timing couldn't be worse. She's broke, jobless, and about to be a single mother. I can only imagine how my parents are reacting to this news. They've always been so concerned about keeping up appearances, and now they've got a scandal on their hands that they can't sweep under the rug. Final update. It's been a year since this whole saga started, and I've finally found some peace. Brianna and Todd are divorced, and she's moved back in with my parents, which is hilarious considering she used to swear she'd never live with them again. Todd's living in some cheap apartment across town, still trying to figure out his life. Jake and I are co-parenting like pros, and we've even managed to become friends. Who would have thought? Brianna's pregnancy has been the talk of the town, and the gossip mill is working overtime. She's tried to put on a brave face, but everyone knows she's struggling. My mother's been doing her best to spin the situation, but there's only so much you can do when your daughter is the star of the town's biggest scandal in years. My father's taken to spending more time in his workshop, which I suspect is his way of avoiding the whole mess. As for me, I've moved on. I'm still living in the house I shared with Todd, but it feels different now. It's mine, not ours, and I've made it my own. The twins are thriving, and every day I'm reminded of how strong I am. I survived betrayal, heartbreak, and the complete destruction of my family, and I came out on the other side stronger for it. Looking back, I can't believe how much my life has changed. I went from being a doormat, letting everyone walk all over me, to standing up for myself and taking control of my own destiny. It hasn't been easy, and there have been plenty of dark moments, but I wouldn't trade the lessons I've learned for anything. So, what's the moral of this story? I'm not sure there's one. Maybe it's that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones closest to you. Or maybe it's that revenge, while sweet, doesn't always turn out the way you expect. Or maybe, just maybe, it's that life is messy, complicated, and full of surprises. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, all we can do is pick up the pieces and keep moving forward. Would I do it all again? Probably, because in the end, I got what I wanted. I'm free from Todd, free from Brianna's shadow, and free to live my life on my own terms. And that's worth everything.